Welcome to the Action Catalyst, where we share inspiration and insights to help you get moving, overcome mediocrity, and move toward achieving your goals in life. From Nashville, Tennessee, this is Dan Moore, your host, partner with Southwestern Consulting and president of Southwestern Advantage.
Sometimes the world feels crazy and lonely to me, maybe even a little fake. But what would happen if I slowed down and started offering kindness to others? The best leaders challenge us to be more, to focus on helping others before ourselves. We can change things for the better. No matter who we are or what we're doing, any one of us can be good to others. This sounds like a small thing, but I've seen how it creates a big ripple effect, where one act of kindness helped you and me, then it kept going again and again. Being kind encouraged someone else to do the same because they felt noticed, because they felt loved. More and more people joined in. Don't you want to be a part of that? A place where everyone looks out for one another, where what we say and do can't help but inspire more kindness. That's the world I want to live in, and that's the world we can create together. So let's look around, wherever we are, and be willing to go first, because not only does kindness matter, it spreads.
To join the movement, visit inspirekindness.com.
Well, we're excited again today on the Action Catalyst to welcome back Mr. Mac Anderson. Hopefully you had a chance to listen to last week's episode, and if you haven't, I'd recommend that you do so as soon as you can, because Mac shared so much wisdom and history from a career of impact and making a difference with people. So, Mac, welcome to the Action Catalyst.
Yeah, thank you again, Dan. I'm honored to be here.
Well, that is great. Well, Mac, this week I'd like to do something a little bit different. Have you been a classroom teacher before?
No.
Okay, well, this is your chance.
Okay.
We're going to have you put on the teacher role for this classroom that's scattered all over the world. I know this is going to be challenging for you because you regard yourself first and foremost as a student, and you prefer to listen actually than talk, and I know that. But you've got so much to share about the things that anybody that's working to build something lasting also faces. So I'm going to just ask you some questions as we go along, and please just share how you actually feel about each one of these. Is that okay?
Will do.
Good deal. Despite the fact that you have been in the motivation business, I'm sure that there have been times that you have been short of motivation yourself, times that you feel like you've hit a total brick wall. It could be finances are short. It could be organizational difficulties, how to work something out, staff motivation, competitive pressure, legal challenges. There's not really any limit to the kind of obstacles people can face.
Yeah, I faced all those, by the way.
Okay, I'm not disappointed. So I'm just curious, when you feel like you've come up to one of these sheer brick walls, what do you say to yourself, first of all? And then are there certain steps that you try to fall back on that help you get through these difficulties?
Yeah, well, if you're an entrepreneur, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you hit brick walls. And because, again, life as an entrepreneur is filled with peaks and valleys, and you've really got to learn to manage your attitude in that regard. And it's not always easy, but one of my biggest brick walls that I hit it happened I call it the fall of '94. Again, I shared with you that we went from 3 million to 50 million from 90 to 94. And then in the fall of 94, my CFO was diagnosed in the summer with terminal brain cancer.
Oh, no.
And I was devastated for Jim and his family. But Jim and his department were creating a software program that would connect accounting to fulfillment in the warehouse. And this was during our big growth spurt, and we had to have it to get through the holiday season. So it had to be finished by September the 1st, and September the 1st rolled around, and they said, it'll be done next week. And I kept hearing that for 2 months. And at the end of the day, it was an entrepreneur's nightmare. I mean, we had thousands of orders, thousands that couldn't be shipped. We had stores that were sitting in malls empty because we couldn't get product to them. And as a result, it was probably the most stressful time in my entrepreneurial life. And when the dust settled in January, I'll never forget, my new CFO, unfortunately Jim had passed away, but my new CFO came to me with the bad news that in that last quarter of that year, we had lost $3 million.
Oh my gosh.
And so needless to say, I was devastated. But Mike Singletary was on our board at that time. Mike was the Hall of Fame linebacker for the Chicago Bears, and Mike is a very positive, motivational guy. And I'll never forget, I was totally down in the dumps, and he comes into my office. He says, Mac, he said, we can get through this. He said, this is a bump in the road. He said, you're the same guy that helped to create thousands of products that have inspired millions of people. You're the same guy that took us from 3 million to 50 million. He said, you can do this. And you know what? After that conversation with Mike, I said, I'm going to give this a shot. I think I can do it. There were times I thought, this is it. I'm going to close the doors. But Mike convinced me that I could do it. And as a result, I went out and did do it. I mean, I had to raise, the bank said, you got to raise $2 million in the next 6 months, and I went out and did it. And not only did we survive after that, but we flourished. But what I really learned, and is that what I called when you fail, if you have the right attitude, you can fail forward, and you can learn from those mistakes. And the big lesson that I learned was that, again, my skills were people skills and creative skills, but I had to hire great people on the operations and accounting side that had been there and done that to help me grow the business again. So I had failed miserably, but I'd learned a great lesson along the way. And one of my favorite quotes is a Henry Ford quote. It said, failure is only the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. And that's what I think I did, and learned some very valuable lessons. But along the way, Dan, to get through those bumps in the road, you've got to learn to manage your attitude, in my opinion. And one of the keys for me in managing my attitude, and it may sound too simple to feel important, but it's important to me, is exercise. And my attitude, my energy levels are directly tied to exercise. And I had a friend, I saw him a few years ago, and I said, Tony, you look great. He's 65, but he looks like he's 55. And he said, I feel great. I got a second job. I said, a second job? I said, I thought your import business was doing well. He said, it is. My second job's on the treadmill every morning between 6 and 7. He said, when I started looking at it like a second job, I showed up whether I wanted to or not. He said, the pay's lousy, but the benefit to my health and my attitude is priceless. And I thought about that, and more than anything, exercise is a stress buster, and the World Health Association says 80% of all illnesses are directly or indirectly caused by stress. So if you don't find ways to bust stress, eventually it'll come back and bust you. So exercise is so important, but other things to do it is just reading inspirational books. But more than anything is talking to positive friends that I respect. And just like a little shot in the arm from a Mike Singletary or other entrepreneurs that have done well that I respect, and I'll share my problems with them or my concerns with them, and they usually can give me some good advice to get me back on track.
Mm-hmm. So surround yourself with other people that are positive, productive people, and they can be an encouragement to you.
Absolutely, and many times I provide that same encouragement for them when they're off track, And again, life as an entrepreneur is filled with peaks and valleys, and you got to recognize when you're in one of those valleys, how do you dig out and get back on the right direction?
Right. Well, I think that's an inspiring story, because I'm sure a lot of people look at your success and think it was just an unblemished path with just one good thing going to another.
No, those people that think that have not been entrepreneurs many times because, again, anyone that starts their own business, it's like I have often said, starting your own business is like going through a maze. You start, you hit the wall, you go sideways, you back up, and you're constantly changing direction based on what's working and what's not. And at the end of the day, you look out, hey, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel there, and it's you go through tremendous learning curves because each business I've started, whether it be McCord Travel, Successories, or Simple Truths, the way where we ended up was not the way the business plan was drawn up in the beginning. We went through, we learned what worked, what didn't. We made mistakes, we learned from those. And we move forward. But life as an entrepreneur is filled with peaks and valleys. And as long as you know that and understand that and surround yourself with positive people and you really learn how to manage your attitude, whether it's exercise or talking with positive people. And there also, I use something else. It's also called what I call emotional triggers. And I've got a little CD that I have my three favorite songs on. They each have a personal meaning. Sometimes I'll just get in my car and drive and roll up the windows. And one is It's a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. You can't feel bad and listen to that song. The other is Wind Beneath My Wings. Bette Midler, I think about my dad and what he meant to me. And the others, I Hope You Dance, Leanne Womack. You can't listen to that and not feel like you want to go out and do something good. For me, it's a very personal thing, these emotional triggers. What works for me may not work for you. It could be just looking back at letters from your mother or father or your kids or whatever. And the other emotional trigger is kind of crazy, but it works for me. It's what I call a 1-minute laugh. And if you're down in the dumps and you get in the car and you roll up the windows and you force yourself to laugh for one solid minute, not 15 seconds, not 30, but one solid minute, I guarantee you, you'll feel better at the end of the laugh. But sometimes again, it's a very personal thing, but use emotional triggers to manage your attitude, use exercise to manage it, use positive books to manage it. And Zig Ziglar was a friend of mine, and Zig said, and use reinforcement. He said, and when I speak, people often come up to me and say, Mac, say, Zig, I liked what you had to say, but really, for me, motivation doesn't last. And Zig said, I look at him and I say, bathing doesn't either. That's why I recommend it daily. And so if you know how to reinforce the positive on a regular basis, one of the keys to staying motivated, managing your attitude is reinforce. It's like one of the keys to making money in real estate is location. I think that managing your attitude, because any leader, let me tell you, if you've got a team, believe me, they're looking at you to stay positive, because the minute they see you're down, they're going to be doubly down. So it's a challenge, but as an entrepreneur, you have to learn to do it.
The leader always sets the tone.
No question.
No question about that. There's an old saying that people will do about half what you do right and twice what they see you do wrong when you're in a leadership role. And so modeling these behaviors and these triggers and reinforcements are so really key. Did you consciously teach these behaviors to your team? When they're down, when they're discouraged, did you share these strategies with them?
Yeah, we would talk about it, and certainly with your key leaders, you have meetings and talk about what's working, what isn't, and obviously, it's up to me. You hire good people, and my main job is to share the mission and have them. First of all, you got to believe. You got to believe in what you're doing, and you got to have a purpose and a mission to believe in. And belief fuels passion, and passion is an unstoppable force at times. And so, believing what you're doing, really helping your team to believe in what the mission is and the purpose is. And really the team, if it's a great team, they're keeping each other motivated. So you've got in every company, you've got 3 or 4 key leaders. And those leaders should be a reflection of you and your values and how you think. And obviously, they're going to hire people under them that are a reflection of them. And that's what building a positive team is all about.
That's great. Mac, did you ever hire anybody that you considered to be smarter than you and more talented than you?
Tons of people. Not only hired people, but I've met people over the years that I've learned from. Every time I speak, I meet people that are smarter than me, and I learn from them. And the authors I had the privilege of meeting over the years, the Ken Blanchards of the world, the Brian Tracy's, the Stephen Coveys, the Ken Blanchards, the John Maxwells. I met all those guys, and I learned from all those guys. And but yeah, hiring people, obviously, again, if you're hiring someone to lead the IT department, they're going to be a lot smarter than I am regarding IT, or someone there's so many different functions, but there are no question that. But I would rather, when you're hiring someone, you've got to really look at 2 things. Number one, are they talented, very talented at what they do? But secondly, do they have the right attitude? Because if they don't, they can pull people down. And one of the best lessons I ever learned from someone is that, and it was a fault of mine, sometimes I was loyal to a fault. When you're making changes in your organization, you're trying to get your team on board, there can always be some negative forces out there that don't want to go with the flow. And he said, one of the best things that you can do is pull the weeds. He said, because the weeds can take over the garden. And, me, I'm a pretty mild-mannered guy, and sometimes, like I said, loyal to a fault. But, when I started looking at people who were a negative force in the organization and didn't want to play by our rules to really grow the business and really stay positive and serve the customer in a meaningful way, I learned to pull the weeds. And it's amazing if you do that in a few departments. It's amazing what a turnaround in the attitude can be, because one bad apple can spoil the bunch.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like if you have a garden that's covered with a completely opaque shade and you can just pull that shade back and a little bit of light in, people thrive and they blossom. But when the dark shade's over them, they can't really get anything going.
Yes.
Great. I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit, because any organization that grows and the different companies that you've built, you're bound to work with people that are tough to work with. And I don't mean just because they're smart, but they're strong-willed or they're opinionated, and it's in a direction different than what you think should be the mission of the company. What have you found to be effective ways to help what you might call difficult people channel that energy and willpower and usually very high intelligence back into the right direction?
Yeah, of course. Everybody has worked with difficult people at times, and there are 2 types of difficult people. One can be someone that can be difficult at times that they need to be difficult. One of my favorite quotes is, if 2 people in business always agree, one is unnecessary. So I have made a point of not hiring yes people, whether it's a gal or a guy. You want people that to stand up for what they believe in and try to sell you on that at the end of the day. So that is not my definition of a difficult person, but at times they can hurt your feelings, if they disagree. And at the end of the day, many times, they're right. So, I really applaud people that stand up for what they believe, but knowing at the end of the day, it's going to be my call, but I get to hear what they have to say and listen to what they have to say with great respect. But the other type of difficult person is the person that is difficult to the degree that they are causing problems within the department, and they can be. So those people are the kind of people that you sit down and you have the conversation with, and you really listen to what they have to say, and you ask the questions. And again, one of the greatest qualities of any great leader is the willingness to listen and then ask questions. I mean, Jim Cathcart, Dan, had a wonderful definition for listening. He said, listening is wanting to hear. It's an emotional process. And he said, really, there's a simple two-step process to be a great listener. That's listen, ask, listen, ask. But so many people, he said, use that other two-step model, which is hear, talk, hear, talk. And so, I never forgot that, because the people that I really respect as leaders and really as friends are wonderful listeners. But the whole key of listening is wanting to hear. The key word there is wanting, because you can tell if someone is just listening, waiting to talk, or really listening to what you have to say. So, but some of those people that aren't willing to listen, that are difficult, you need to pull the weeds. But the ones that are good people, but you want to keep in the organization, is really just to sit back and let them tell you exactly why they're unhappy or why they disagree with you. And again, it's the listen, ask, and at the end of the day, it may be a situation where it's best for you and the company to let them move on. But if they're a great person and they can be saved, sometimes that 1 hour of just listening and asking questions, and then at the end of the day, you can ask the question, what can I do to make you feel different? And they really appreciate that, because they know you've listened to everything they had to say.
Mm-hmm. Which can be difficult for strong people that are strong leaders to sometimes just back up and care enough to listen.
It can be very difficult, but it's a wonderful quality to have.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. You've had 5 so far successful businesses, and knowing you don't sit still for long. There'll be more coming. Most human beings look forward to a day that they can coast, that they can go, whew, wow, pressure's off, not really have to work as hard. Now, some people start that process really early in their careers, and they're victims of the character we call Mr. Mediocrity. They start doing less than superior work. They start looking for shortcuts. They kind of get complacent. They get in a rut. And Mac, in your life, you've never allowed that to happen. Why not? You've had many times when you could just say, hey, look how well I've done.
Well, you know what, Dan? It's because if I, number one, I'm a competitor, and if I really believe in something, and I believe that I can use my skills to help bring it to life, then that's what I'm going to do. And again, belief fuels passion. And if you have a mission, and our mission in the past with Success Reasons, Simple Truths, it's really about reinforcing the positive in the world. And we got thousands and thousands of letters and calls from people that have thanked us for doing that. And I have to tell you, that feels great. I mean, whether it be school teachers or football coaches or presidents, CEOs of companies, whether it be moms, dads. Sometimes just, again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it and how you present it in content in a book, that the light bulb goes from off to on. But so if I really believe in something, then I'm not going to go at it half-heartedly. And really, one of the books that I co-authored, that it was probably my best-selling book. It sold 2 million copies. Was a book called 212, The Extra Degree. And the concept behind 212, if you haven't heard it, at 211, water's hot, very hot. But at 212, it boils and turns to steam. And steam can power a locomotive. And it's that one extra degree that makes all the difference. And it's sometimes, so many times in life, it's that one extra degree of effort that separates the good from the great. And when you think about it, I mean, how many great managers have you that didn't use the 212 philosophy? Teachers, coaches, even parents that didn't embrace that one extra degree, and it made all the difference. And you can tie that back to service and leadership and attitude. And when I speak, many times it's about how to create a 212 culture in your company, and really when you have that 212 mindset, it's very difficult to coast because you're always looking to make something all it can be, whether it be better service or better teamwork or better leadership or having a better attitude. Because that it does separate the good from the great. That one extra degree can make all the difference.
Mm-hmm. So when you're true to your mission, and it's a mission that is of great value, you never really are finished. You can always motivate people better. You can always encourage the world more. I hear you saying that really clearly.
Well, if you believe in what you're doing,
right.
If you believe in your mission, it's hard to coast.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a purpose, you got a mission, and every day you want to get one step closer to accomplishing that mission or that goal in life. And the other thing is really setting what I call short-term realistic goals constantly. So many times people think that it's the long-term goals that motivate folks, but in my opinion, and they do. But to get to the long-term goal, you have to have a series of realistic short-term goals that keep you fired up and keep you motivated.
Well, you mentioned last time, hearing from Bob Stover, that inch by inch, life's a cinch, yard by yard, life's hard.
Yes. And that little quote, believe it or not, when I become overwhelmed in business, that little quote, I can say, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I got to get through this, what I need to do. And I'll make the list, and that list really reflects the inch by inch, life's a cinch, yard by yard, life is hard. Because if I look at the whole list, I'm overwhelmed. But if I look at number one on the list and say, okay, can I do that myself, or can I hand it off to one of my teammates? And you ask that question on each thing on the list, and at the end of the day, you can get there. But that one little quote has made a difference in my life in many ways, whether it be as a student or as a business person. And it's so simple that really it's crazy, but it registered in my mind as a young college student, and it stuck with me. And for years, I had it in my wallet. And as you know, I've been collecting quotes for the rest of my life. But that kind of kicked off the quote collection process.
Right. Well, that makes so much sense. Taking a minute to take a breath and make a list. I'm sure that calms you down. It helps you say, all right, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to delegate this.
Yes.
But it focuses you on what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
I think this is practical, and it's on target, and it's really, really valuable. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, it's valuable for me. And again, staying motivated and managing your attitude is a very personal thing. And what works for me may not work for you. But the key is you need to find out what works for you, and because keeping a positive attitude is so important to success as a leader.
I love what you just said. What works for one doesn't work for another, and we've got to know what works for us as individuals.
Absolutely.
What's motivating to one person may be demotivating to another.
That's exactly right.
Well, sometimes I'm sure in your businesses, you've had people that you really were sold on, that you believe in, that you feel like you can build with, and then they come to you and say, Mac, I'm leaving, I'm moving on, I've found another opportunity, I'm going somewhere. Assuming you do want to keep them on your team, what are some things you would say, or maybe actions you would take, that could make a difference in keeping that really valuable person?
Well, it goes back to really caring about that individual and what makes them feel the way they do. And to find out what makes them feel the way they do. The only way to do it is the listen-ask formula. And you sit there, whether it takes an hour or 2 hours or whatever, and you really dive and you really let them share with you the reasons they feel the way they do. And at the end of the day, once you hear those reasons, you might feel it may be best for them to move on and go after something that will advance their career and if you really love them as a person, then you're all for it. Could be all for that. But if at the end of the day there's something you can do to make them feel differently about why they're leaving, then the only way you can find out is get to the real reasons. And sometimes people don't want to tell you the real reasons unless you spend an hour or two with them using that little simple 2-step process, and that's listen, ask, and you know what, Dan, something that I heard Mary Kay Ash speak probably 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, and she talked about her first sales job. And she was so excited to attend the convention, and she sees the number one guy, and she makes her way through the crowd, and she extends her hand, and she says, "Can you share with me some of your secrets to success?" And he looked at her and just turned and walked away. And she never forgot that moment. She said, "If I ever enjoy any success in my life, I'm going to share it with others." And when she went into a room filled with people, when she became successful, she used to pretend that everyone in the room had a sign around their neck that said, "Make me feel important." And you know what? We all want to feel important. And one of your challenges as a leader and as a person that you're having that conversation with is you want to let them know just how important they are in this organization, and how important they've been in affecting lives in this organization, and how important they've been to you personally. So I think, and one of the key ways to make anyone feel important is to sincerely listen to what they have to say, and it's a simple formula, but I keep coming back to the listening idea. And that listening is wanting to hear, and people can sense. They can truly sense if you're a great listener, or if you're just listening to get through the conversation. But making people feel important when you're having that conversation with someone you want to keep is critical, I think. And but it's got to be sincere.
Right. So I take it you don't believe in telling that person you're disloyal and you don't appreciate all the good things I've done for you.
You got that right. You got that right.
That's an emotional reaction, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
We've got to stifle that, push it down, and think, what are we about here? What's our purpose? What do we need to do?
Absolutely.
And to have the confidence to listen and ask, as you said. I think it's fantastic. Mac, we live in a complicated world. We live in a world with increasing tension, discord. What would you share with our listeners about things that they could maybe do right after this podcast to help lighten the load of the world a little bit, to help people come together?
Well, one of the keys to my success, I think, is I truly understand the power of kindness. And I said earlier, companies don't succeed, people do. And again, people don't care how much they don't care what we know until they know how much you care. And so I know that General Earl Hailston, and one of my favorite stories is Charlie Gibson on back in 2003 was interviewing General Earl Hailston. He was 3 miles off the border of Iraq, stationed. He was a general of the U.S. Marines. He was waiting to go to war. And Charlie was there interviewing him. He said, "General, if you do you have any hobbies other than your profession?" He said, yeah, I do. He said, I love photography, especially taking photos of my men. He said, I've been here 3 days, and each day I'll go out in the field and take photos of my men. At night, I'll go back to my tent, and I'll email that photo with a short note back to their moms in the States. And Charlie said, wow, I mean, what do you say? And then the general turned on his computer, and I'll paraphrase the last letter he had written. He said, Dear Mrs. Johnson, he said, you might enjoy seeing this photo of your son. He's doing great, and you did great as a parent. And he's a wonderful young man, and I'm honored to serve with him in the U.S. Marines, General Earl Haleston. And I got to tell you, Dan, I had goosebumps, watching that. Because here's a man that truly understood what caring, kindness, and 212 leadership was all about. But so I guess to answer your question about what we can do to make the world a better place is just make it a little kinder. And not only will you feel better, but I can assure you that everybody you touch feels better. So that's my advice anyway.
I love it, Mac. I can't imagine a better way to wrap up what's been an incredibly illuminating and most importantly uplifting conversation for me. I feel like I've been talking to somebody that I've known forever, and I've only known you half of forever. So it's just been great. So Mac shared with all of us the importance of music. I think on that final note, we should all listen to the song Try a Little Tenderness, because it'll go a long way. So Mac, on behalf of all of our listeners everywhere, thank you. Thank you for sharing of your heart, of your background, your spirit, your vision with all of the listeners of the Action Catalyst.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dan. You've been great.
Wow. That was a tutorial. That was a case study that the Harvard Business School can never get close to. I'm just going to try to reflect on some of the learnings that I got from listening to what Mac had to say. We talked, first of all, about what you do when you hit a brick wall, a problem you don't know how to solve, some issue. Mac shared a couple of things, and not quite in this order, but one of them he said, just realize that starting a business is like a maze. You go forward, and then you hit a blank wall, and you turn left or right, and then you find a little way out, and then you find another way out, and you keep forward. But he said one of the most important things is to manage attitude. And when he shared about the tremendous business setback, not only that, but I know that he was personally close to that top executive who passed away from brain cancer. And to be in a position where you owe a lot of money after being one of the great success stories in business is a terrible situation to be in. He said that he did several specific things. One was to get advice from people that he trusted. And a board member, Mike Singletary, came in and said, Mac, you're the same guy. You're the same guy that built this. You're not any different, and we can build it back. Now, I've seen Mike Singletary, and if he told me anything, I'd believe him. But Mac had the wisdom to believe that. He relearned certain skills. He hired others. It was the opportunity, as he put it, to begin again more intelligently. He realized, of course, that attitude and energy are directly tied to energy level, and that if he could figure out how to keep his energy level high, then it could make things happen. So along the way, he's developed sort of 5 winning strategies, and I want to try to summarize these 5. Number 1, the importance of exercise. Nobody can build a solid structure if the foundation is weak. And if our health is not there, if we don't feel fit and strong and have vitality and stamina, we can't build on that. And so Mac's focus on exercise and staying fit, where he can do the things that he wants to do, is incredibly important. This is very resonant for me, because I know that when the person doesn't feel good about themselves, they can't do very well with others. And I've certainly had those periods of time when I didn't feel on top of my physical condition. When we get into any kind of an exercise program, it helps us. Now, you may be wondering what kind of exercise to do. The answer is anything. Whether it's walking 10,000 steps a day, whether it's climbing 10 flights of steps a day, whether it's walking faster than you normally walk, whether it's riding a bicycle, whether it's taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Anything, exercise. It helps us to feel better, it helps us to live longer, and it gives us internal confidence. Number 2, he turns to others for advice and guidance. There's an old saying that no human can be objective about herself or about himself. And so we need others that can look at us and give us that advice, like that great linebacker saying, Mac, you're the same guy that you were before. Third, look for internal sources of wisdom that come from books, that come from audios, that come from podcasts, that come from videos. because those inspirations work in our subconscious mind and they give us ideas. That's why quotes are so important, and they've been so important to Mac. I think they're important to all of us. Fourth, those emotional triggers. Nobody could argue that music is not an emotional trigger. Every person on this podcast has had times when a song came on that you hadn't heard in 20 years, and it takes you immediately back to what you were doing at that stage in your life, people you were with, who you hung out with. We trigger our own emotions with music. Mac's got 3 favorite songs that he loves to listen to. What are your 3 favorite? What are my 3 favorites? These are songs that never get old. We never get tired of hearing them because they're so important. And then one I've never heard before, the 1-minute laugh. Now, I have actually tried this with Mac's suggestion, and the first 10 seconds are the most phony, fake, ridiculous, contrived, put-on laugh you can ever imagine. But after a while, you start to hear yourself trying to laugh, and then that's really funny. And then you start hearing yourself again, and before you know it, you are hooting and hollering, and it is physiologically impossible to laugh for a minute and not feel better. You get an endorphin overload. You flood your emotional engine just like a car can get flooded, but it's with the good stuff, the 1-minute laugh, which is so key. And what Mac has learned is that we have to reinforce these things. In other words, motivation is not a pill that you take when you feel bad. It's more like a vaccine that we take repeatedly. It's like the vitamins to prevent us from getting sick. And of course, the Zig Ziglar priceless quotation. Yeah, motivation wears off. So does bathing. That's why we recommend it every day. I think you've even heard from what Mac has said that he's been a student throughout his life, and the great people that he's met, he's learned from and made these notes because that's such an important thing. Dealing with problems. Relax, take a breath, make a list. Do one item, and the other ones you either do or you delegate. What a great attitude toward problem solving. I think it does something beyond just get some things done. It gets us into motion. And when we feel paralyzed and we're not able to move, our confidence goes down. And motion affects emotion. There's an old saying that we all practice at Southwestern, and that is that action cures fear. Action cures fear. And if we'll write down something that we're concerned about and do that one thing, then the fear of it goes away. We start to feel more comfortable, and then we can do some other things because that's such an important thing. Mac has fallen back time and time again on lessons from different stages in his career. Having those short-term realistic goals. Remember, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, life is hard. So setting some short-term goals and ticking those off and getting that done because it's important. Mac doesn't coast for a couple of reasons. First, he's always regarded himself as a competitor. And even though some of us don't feel like we like to compete against others, we definitely can all compete against ourselves. What was my best yesterday? Can I do better today? Can we do better to improve the world? Can we make our product better? Can we reinforce what's going on? He also learned along the way the importance of that one extra degree. And I highly recommend picking up the book 212. We'll find a way to make that available through links on our theactioncatalyst.com because 212, that extra degree, that extra effort, that extra focus, that's the difference between really hot water and harnessing steam that can power a locomotive and change the world. Really incredible. We talked about dealing with difficult people, and I really loved the way Mac started. He said, well, first of all, realize that sometimes people being difficult are really good because they challenge your way of thinking. He didn't want to be surrounded by people that always said, yes, Mac, whatever you think. He said, they may hurt my feelings, but you know what? When I think about it, they were often right, and that helped me grow. It takes a confident person to feel that way. And then the other kind, when they're just causing problems, we listen for a long time. We try to help them. We use Jim Cathcart's philosophy that Matt quoted, that what listening really means is a true wanting to hear. Listening means I want to hear. It's not I'm going to pretend to listen so I can tell you what I think. And figuring out if we can deal with it, and if not, sometimes we got to pull the weeds. And that's just a fact of life as we move forward, and it helps others really blossom in a great way. Retaining people. It's all about caring. It's all about mission. It's all about realizing that people look at the leader to set the example. And if we do that listen and ask formula, listen and ask, we're going to figure out if we might be able to make a real difference. I appreciated what Max said, that it may take a while to get to the real reason. It may take an hour, it may take 2 hours. Sometimes it takes longer. But when we get to the real reason, it's only because they realize we truly care and that we're not going to put them at risk by telling us what the real reason is. And understanding fundamentally that attitude of helping others feel important because they are important is what retention is all about. showing genuine appreciation to other people. There's so much wisdom that just came. I'm going to listen to this again because I know I've missed a lot of things. But I think the last thing I'd like to wrap with this is this. Managing our attitude is two things. First of all, it's our responsibility. We can't depend on somebody else to walk into the room and say, I'm going to manage your attitude for you. We have to stand up and say, managing my attitude is my responsibility. And when we do that, we then have to realize that it's personal. That what motivates one person might not motivate another. The first time I heard about self-talk, somebody said, say this to yourself, Dan. And I did it, and I thought it was ridiculous. And it didn't work, and I felt less motivated. And I realized why. Because I was using the self-talk phrase or the mantra of somebody else. Fit them perfectly. But that person and I are very different clothing sizes. If I'd try to put on his trousers or his jacket, it wouldn't have fit me either. So knowing ourselves, knowing what works for us, that's what it's about. So managing attitude is personal. If music doesn't work for you, do something else. If exercise doesn't work for you, think again, you're wrong. But if self-talk doesn't work for you, change your self-talk. If the people you hang out with don't motivate you, I promise you, change the people you hang out with, and it will make a big difference. So I feel like I've been immensely impacted by this time with Mac Anderson. I've been a student, I appreciate him, and it's a privilege to be able to call him friend. So let's put this all to work, each of us. I'm challenged to do that. I hope you are as well. And we look forward to having you next time. In the meantime, remember, avoid mediocrity. Don't get complacent. Figure out how to move forward to those goals and realize there's ways around setbacks, there's ways around obstacles. Care deeply, and let's do our part to make the world a kinder place. Dan Moore, look forward to next time. Bye-bye.